living proud. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel. Yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Smash Accept podcast, part of the Smash or Pass, baby. I'm still mixing it up there. Let's go. Hey, hello and welcome to episode 6 of Smash or Pass podcast, part of the Smash Accept network of podcasts. Super excited to talk tonight. It is startup season. We just got the combine down. I know in the Patreon we're updating rankings and doing things back and forth. And right now in startup seasons, the biggest question is, do I take the player or do I take the rookie? You know, and most drafts, they either have, said rookie player or rookie pick. Tonight, we're going to really focus in on those rookie picks. But I want to talk really about when I get to that spot. Do I want the 102 or do I want this player? Do I want the 105 or this player? We're going to help you navigate your startup drafts, and nobody better than do that than my man at Fantasy Nerd Boy. I think he's done like 52 of them already this offseason. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Yeah, not quite up to 52, but it is definitely a great time to do startups because the value you're getting right now is incredible. And, you can look back at this time when you're doing startups and just say, I got him there and I got him there. And you can definitely get you also make some big mistakes at this time of the year too, where you're looking back and you're like, oh man, I can't believe I took him in the third round. But I'm excited to start the show today, and it's been a crazy day in the NFL. I see the NFL's trying to do like NBA, off season where they're just trying to make all these big splashes and big moves. And I think they're really doing a good job as far as, when they're making these things happen, as far as Danny Dimes and Lamar popping off on the same day. But I'm excited to get this going.
That is perfect. And you're right. I mean, we're here to mitigate some of those risks. We're also here to pick out some of those guys where, last year at this time when we did Smash Accept 3, I believe I was getting Jalen Hurts in that mid-second, late second. And we're able to pick out some of these guys that are going to be ascending too. Mung, we talked about it already. Smash 9 is going to be coming up. I'm trying to pull your leg a little bit because I say you're kind of getting into that startup area as well, itching for another one. How you doing tonight?
Good, yeah. I think I am in for one startup this off season, so perhaps it will be Smash 9. I'm definitely open to that. But yeah, it's peak startup season, right? This is the time when everyone wants a share of those hot incoming rookies, even if they traded away their 2023 firsts in their current dynasty leagues, right? And this is the time when everyone is missing football and craving more NFL action, and the XFL starting back up soon, but it's just not quite the same. Nothing really comes close to true NFL football games. And it's important to remember, too, during this important time that as free agency gets started, as we start hearing some of these deals or potential trades, Derek Carr signing with the Saints, Geno Smith re-signing with Seattle, right? These are all reasons why it's okay to take your time when you're on the clock in a dynasty startup, because you get that 8 hours or 4 hours or however long for a reason. And yeah, you don't want to just sit on the clock for no reason at all. But when there is a lot going on, it's okay to take your time. Remember that.
Yeah, I mean, Carr and Geno Smith went back to back, a couple picks before me where guys were savvy enough to sit there a little bit and try to, navigate that. Nerd Boy, the biggest thing, how do you look at rookie picks? Because I know everybody does it a little bit different. It's like, a lot of people, just talk to me through that process of what you're looking at. How are you getting these rookie picks when they're in draft? Because we all want those rookies, but I mean, how aggressive should we be, and how do you place value on them as we're going throughout?
Yeah, I think it comes with some practice, and I think that's why I try to harp on, if you're not going to get into a lot of startups, try to do some mocks. Get some friends together, and we do a lot of mock drafts. With certain groups of people where we're just figuring out where these rookies go. And that's what we did before we actually started up most of the leagues. So, competing, just going in and seeing where these rookies go, where everyone is valuing them is really how I get my value, and how I decide when I'm going to take rookie picks for the most part.
Absolutely perfect. And that's what we're doing tonight is that you and V Pizzle were putting together a spreadsheet of where guys are going. So we're not just arbitrarily throwing out numbers of this player's going here and there. We're kind of giving you that ADP that you guys have been, putting together and trying to look at where these rookie picks are going and slotting them in, because I think, to me, that's where it's all about, is you're trying to find out those areas you want to get in the draft. You want to try to find those weaknesses, and those strengths and move around. We've been talking a lot about the 101, and that's frankly been going in that first round consistently. The latest I've seen Nerd Boy is go at 201. The earliest we've seen is like 106. Almost always it's 19, 110 after we get, the 6 big quarterbacks and then Jefferson and Chase, and that's pretty much where he goes. But the part that everybody keeps asking is, they're like, Dad, what do I do? When do I take the 102? And Nerd Boy, I'm going to start with you. Is like, there's this tricky spot here, right after A.J. Brown. We're looking at Dak, Deshaun Watson, and the 102 all kind of go in that same area. And if you're in a startup, this is where it gets difficult, because people are like, who do I take? Am I going to smash the 102, or am I going to smash the veterans and try to figure out how to formulate my plan there? Because I think it's big to try to determine what kind of direction you want to go. A lot of times we don't do that until maybe the 3rd, 4th round exactly. But right now, are you smashing the 102, or are you taking these 2 veterans?
Yeah, I think that's depending on where you're going to go with your roster. You might have to make that decision pretty early on, where I think Watson is going to, boost in value way above the 102. And I think Dak is exactly going to stay at the 102. And I think that's where you can decide, I will go 102 if I'm going to slow build and kind of take my time with the roster and maybe compete for next year. But I think I would take Dak over the 102 if I was going full compete. So those 2 are pretty close for me, but I would definitely Watson way above the 102 personally.
And I've been seeing Watson already start to creep up. We've been doing these drafts since the Super Bowl ended, and Dak pretty much doesn't change. He's in that 204 to 208 range nonstop. That's just where he goes, and it's good value. It is what it is. You know what you're getting. Deshaun Watson, I see slowly starting to creep up, and in Smash 8 he went at 112, and he's working his way up there, and we kind of saw the writing on the wall with that. Mung, the next set, once we get past these big quarterbacks, so we know in the first round there's about 10 quarterbacks go. I mean, it is at least 8. Some drafts it's 10, depending on where Kyler and Deshaun Watson go. Then we get to 103. So, with the combine, that whole tier of 102, 103, 104 might have changed quite a bit with Anthony Richardson potentially jumping into there. But right now, I want you to go smash or pass. Are you taking the 103, Breece Hall, or Jalen Waddle? So, again, a lot of pieces that can go in there. But if you're starting your team right now, what is that piece you want out of those 3?
Yeah, so from an abstract standpoint, I will say that in general, this time of year, I will lean the rookie pick, because I think they will continue to increase in value, leading up to the NFL draft and the rookie drafts. But if I had to, if I were, say, on the clock and I could not trade down for profit, I would probably take Breece Hall over the 102 right now, but it's very close. And then I would take that tier of quarterbacks over Jalen Waddle in Superflex formats.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because we want to talk about trading down, and I've been getting so many questions about startups. And Mike, I'm looking at once you get to after the 102, I almost have that whole area almost up until where you get Garrett Wilson in the early 3rd. You're getting Waddle, Breece Hall, McCaffrey, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Wilson, Kenneth Walker even. It's like a big tier. And you could definitely exploit things if you're willing to move from 206 to 304 and try to move somewhere else. And you're going to be in that same tier. And I don't think people have quite formulated those tiers yet. They see a 204, a 205, a Jalen Waddle, and they're able to move back into an area, get a Amon-Ra St. Brown, a Garrett Wilson, maybe even that 104 Kenneth Walker area. Talk to me a little bit how about you navigate these early rounds, because we're going to do another podcast after this, really talking deep strategy. But I find this rounds 2 through 4, guys, is where you can really make or break your team, right? You can reach way too far and crush your team, or you can start to move back and accumulate value. But this is really where you separate the men from the boys. Right in this area is how you set up the rest of your draft.
Yeah, so tiers are huge in startups. If you see a player that you really have your eye on, you're ready to take them, but then you look about 5 or 6 spots backwards and you see a player that can match that value. As far as production goes, they can give you the same amount of production per year, around the same age. So that's I look at and I say, okay, I could grab, Brees right now, which, that's great for my team, but I could just wait. I could grab Wilson or Amon-Ra right at the end right there, and I can probably tier up for, easily with the second round there. You're looking at some good value. You could jump your fifth to third at that point sometimes when people really have their eyes set on someone like, Brees or Kenneth Walker or somebody like that. So,
and round 3 or 4 it's a hotbed of guys with Drake London and Devonta Smith and just so many absolute stud wide receivers. So if you can, move back from mid-second to early third and move your fifth up to a third, that's an absolute smash accept. The guys, and I've been putting out there every position, I'm putting out my rankings, and then I'm putting where the rookie picks are involved in those, and you'd be surprised, like every single one of the guys in this group in Smash 8, they're like, they have moved up to get ahead of me and snipe in those areas because it's just out there, and I encourage you guys to check that out. Mung, I'm going to come back to you again, and then we're going to go back to Nerd Boy. We're looking at a spot right now where, the early third round, Amon-Ra St. Brown goes, Garrett Wilson, they're starting to move themselves into that late second, above that early third, but then we get to 104, so we're going to talk Garrett Wilson, 104, Kenneth Walker, and Kyle Pitts. So you're on the clock right now. Is that 104 worth that to you? I mean, let's start breaking these guys down.
Yeah, I think it's about right because just over the weekend, I think the 104 gained a lot of value with how well Anthony Richardson tested. And I think come rookie draft time, assuming that we have 3, maybe even 4 quarterbacks in the top 10 overall picks, I mean, we could see Levis, Richardson, Young, and Stroud be the clear, 1B tier from 102 to 105. So I do think that these guys are going to carry a lot of value as we head into rookie draft season in super flex formats. And overall, I mean, in general, I always want to lean the quarterback value in super flex. And especially because even when rookie quarterbacks don't produce or struggle, I mean, we saw last year, even heading into 2022, Trevor Lawrence had a terrible rookie season with Urban Meyer. Trey Lance didn't really play in 2021, but heading into last season, both of those guys maintained or even increased in value over the offseason after their rookie years, even after disappointing. So these young quarterbacks not only will have a lot of value, but they will hold value for at least a year or two.
That's great because I keep seeing everybody on Twitter, Mung, is saying the 104 has raised value. Well, guess what? That means the 105 has and the 106. So if you had the 106 and you felt like you were on the outside looking in, you weren't going to get Gibbs, you weren't going to get JSN, that 106 just got sexier. Like it literally just moved into a spot where, and maybe even the 107. Right now, the 107, people are like, we start to break off. What about those leagues where a guy needs a quarterback? I mean, I saw guys reaching last year for Kenny Pickett. Maybe they reached for Will Levis and put him there, move JSN all the way back to 107. I mean, I would literally lose it if I had that opportunity. But Nerd Boy, let's look at the other side because this is a part where that 2-3 turn, man, if you aren't playing 3-round reversal and you get Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen and you can double tap here in this area of the draft, like you are absolutely set up. So if you guys have Kentucky Derby, I love taking those top 3 picks, if it isn't 3-round reversal. Talk to me a little bit. We got Garrett Wilson, we got Kenneth Walker, we got that 104. Are you on the same boat as Mung, or are you making a move with one of these other guys? And there's no wrong answer here. Like, I love what Mung said, because when you take the 104, you don't have to take Richardson, right? Let's say Richardson goes to an area you don't like, but Gibbs goes to KC and JSN goes to the Chargers, and now all of a sudden you're like, all right, let's start reformulating. 4, you still have options. You can make moves on draft day. You can kind of move around. But guys like Garrett Wilson and Kenneth Walker and Kyle Pitts are like, you can't go wrong with them as well.
Yeah, I think I would still take Garrett Wilson and Amon-Ra over the 104. But I to Mung's point, those picks are still in value, and they will for up until your rookie draft at this point. But it hasn't quite moved to the point where I'm gonna take that pick over Garrett Wilson or Amon-Ra.
Garrett Wilson, we've been leading the charge on that thing, and like, man, people traded up in Smash 8 to go get him at 2.9 because they knew I was going to take him, which is like, come on. Like, I was super pumped there. I got, Fields and Chase in the first round, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm going to be able to get Garrett Wilson at 301. A guy moved up to 209 and took him in that area. But it's like, you got to know your league mates. You got to look at things. You can't go wrong there. I personally love Garrett Wilson, but I think if you take the 104, you have that fluidity to make that decision if you want a quarterback. And we know that the quarterback position starts to dry out pretty quickly. But then we get a little bit of a lull, and I think this is going to change, Mike, is the 105 right now has been going in that end of the third. And I think that's slowly going to move back. You look at Kenneth Walker, Kyle Pitts, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, Andrews, T. Higgins, Saquon, Drake London, then the 105. And I think I can see that start to gradually inch up here. Right now, would you be taking London, Barkley, or the 105? And I know that gets tricky. Again, it's a matter of build, but we're looking at that difficult situation when you get to the end of the third. And I see London and Olave start to really gradually creep up here as well. And it becomes a situation here where it's like you can't really go wrong, but which way would you be going?
I would go London for that. It is tough, though, because you're trying to figure out your build at this point in time. But you're also trying to grab the value that you see is going to increase over time as well.
Right.
I think London fits that bill for both, where he's going to rise. With the 105, you don't know. I would take JSN over London, but I wouldn't take Gibbs over London, if that makes sense. So there's no sure thing there, where London is that sure thing, and I would definitely go with him. But I would probably take the 105 over Barkley at this point too. So
yeah, and I took London at the 308, and because the 104 and 105 were already gone in that draft, and every draft is going to be a little bit different. I think London, and like to your point, is T. Higgins going to increase in value anymore? No. Is Saquon Barkley going to increase in value? No. Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, can they go up? Absolutely. In the next couple of months, I don't see a scenario where that's even possible. Drake London gets a real quarterback. No knock on Desmond Ridder, but that's just not it. Or that 105 ends up being JSN in the right situation. Mung, you love London. And this is the same kind of thing. And I was so happy when I drafted him. I texted you. I was like, yo, I got me my first Drake London share. But you're sitting there, Drake London 105 and Saquon, and that's like literally tugging at your heartstring from every single direction because those are your boys right there. What would you do in there?
Well, to be perfectly frank, I have Barkley right next to McCaffrey, so much higher.
Much higher.
For me, I think I'm still taking London over the 105. But I can see an argument for the 105 just because we know that rookie fever is going to grow, right? Again, barring, the Falcons somehow trading for Lamar Jackson or getting a huge quarterback upgrade, I could see if Jackson Smith-Njigba or Jahmyr Gibbs goes to a great landing spot, you could probably get London plus for the 105 in a couple months, depending on the league. So again, we always talk about this, right? Understanding your league mates, do they buy into rookie hype? Are they down on Drake London just because he had a disappointing rookie season with no quarterback help? So these are all factors that come into play. Personally, I lean London slightly.
And I like that you're sticking, Barkley right now, and I think the whole third round I'm sitting there, and he belongs in that same area as Kenneth Walker and Christian McCaffrey. I have them in that similar tier, and you just keep falling back and back in that third round. So to your point, like Saquon Barkley's become a nice value, and I'm not quite sure why he keeps moving back after the year that he had, but great point there. Then we start to move into the fourth, and you got Etienne and Olave. I'm seeing them late third. Olave went 306 in Smash 8, so he's moving up. Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Diggs, Kupp, Devontae Adams. I mean, there's some great that fringe wide receiver one value in that fourth round. Then we get to the 106, and the 106 is sandwiched in between a couple of running backs. And this one I think is our easiest out of the group, but it's Javonte Williams, Josh Jacobs of the 106. Mike, we've been talking about it all the time. I mean, this is an area where Gibbs, Richardson, JSN, somebody's going to be in that area at the 106. And Jacobs, we saw just got the franchise tag. So is it going to be Jacobs, Javonte, or the 106 for you?
It's pretty easily the 106 for me. When I'm at that spot where I'm choosing a rookie pick, close to a running back, I'm probably always going to go rookie pick. Because
and
we talk about
in that same area. I mean, like how far up would you go? I mean, I'm taking the 106 over Kupp. Austin Eckler is the next one. You going 106 or Eckler?
I would go Eckler.
That one's close.
I think his game.
How about Diggs?
It's close, but I think I would take Diggs. That's
right. This
definitely,
becomes a tricky situation. That 106
because
I feel like has some real chance to move up in value here.
I would probably take the 106 over Diggs, but that's very close, and that's team build dependent for me because they're so close right now.
Yeah, and I think this is
definitely
why we want to talk about this is because this whole round. I mean, you look at the 106s: Jacobs, Kupp, Eckler, Diggs, Devonta, DK Metcalf. I mean, that's a similar type area. That's where it belongs. It's going to keep moving up. Mung, if you're in that area, you got to decide between, let's say, Kupp, Diggs, in the 106. I mean, where are you going? Is this a similar type thing of if they're close like this, we just keep leaning the rookie?
Yeah, for sure. And especially in this case, I would lean the 106 over these older wide receivers because they are nearing that cliff where even if the production stays, they're just never going to be worth, a first in a few months down the line, right? Mm-hmm. And even if they tweak their ankle or something for a short-term injury, their value will absolutely plummet in a week or two. So for me, it's the 106 over those veteran wide receivers. But honestly, I haven't looked too much at actual startup boards because I haven't done any in a while. But looking at this board, I would look to trade up from rounds 4 through 6 into the first 3 rounds.
Yep.
While also trading down. So if I can package, my 4th, 5th round startup pick for a 3rd and 7th, I would gladly do that because, I think Javonte Williams is closer to 206 than 106. It's crazy to me that he's still being valued as a mid-first.
And he went in around the 1-9 in our other one. And I'm glad you said that because we're doing the startup strategy. And I know Zoltan's really going to talk about one-year punts. My biggest thing and the thing that I'm taking away that I've been saying to everybody is it's a move up and then it's a move down. Because then once you get into say round 6 through 9, there's not a huge difference between round 6 you're taking George Pickens and round 9 you're taking Brandon Ayuk, or round 8 you're taking Brandon Ayuk. I mean, there's not a huge difference in value. And as I'm looking at where these rookie picks are, and that's why we wanted to talk about it, there's a huge gap between where we start to take guys and then where they're going to end up being. So I think there's a huge area to make up value in there, and I absolutely love that take because the next one we have is 107 and it's sandwiched right there in the area between Treylon Burks, who I value, maybe 108, and TJ Hawkinson. So, Nerd Boy, I got sniped on Burks again. I was just, I thought I was going to get him. Burks we have as a breakout guy. Now we got to talk about 107. 107 where right now we're looking at the 4 quarterbacks are gone. JSN's gone. Gibbs is gone. So then it's going to be, that running back that gets that dream landing spot. It's going to be, Quentin Johnson or a guy that's going to be, or Jordan Addison, depending on where they go. This is a tricky situation, or Will Levis, depending on what you need for your team. So is it Burks? Is it Hawkinson? Or is it the 107?
I would go 107. Hawk is pretty close to me. He's actually closer to the 107 than Burks is right now. I have Burks in 108 range.
Yep.
I have Addison possibly going to the Giants, which I think would be a smash spot for him.
And I love everyone is down on him on Twitter. We talked about it in the Discord chat. We didn't think he was going to run 4.3. He ran a 4.55. The second time a 4.49. Same area as guys better than what Cooper Kupp was, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans. Don't get caught up on the fact that he didn't run a 4.4 and start moving Jordan Addison back. I know we're way too early in the process for rookie drafts, but I would not be. He's still going to get round 1 draft capital, and I think that's a great player in that area. And I'm with you. That's why I did those exercises where we're doing rankings. I have Burks firmly in that 109 area or 108 area, and I think if you can get a pick in the 107 right in front of him, I think that gives you a little bit more value when it comes rookie day.
Yeah, absolutely. Addison for one isn't a burner either. He's more of a, footwork, route tree, kind of guy where that's not his thing. And, he's got many other talents besides his speed. So I wouldn't let that deter you from being on that guy at all.
Let's look at the 108 spot in this area. Mung, we talk about running backs, being a risk, potentially getting extra capital, and this is the area where now DeAndre Swift in our draft in Smash 8 just kept falling and falling because people are avoiding, and that could be a major value. But DeAndre Swift, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, and the 108 all go in that same area.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would lean the rookie pick just because I think that's going to gain value. I also think, guys like Swift, Pollard, Stevenson, these are guys who are all going to be the lead backs, but in committees, right? So you are going to get those big weeks from them where they go off for two touchdowns, but they might have some quiet weeks here and there as well. And really, again, this is the range that I'm still looking to trade down out of, because when you look at even some of the players that went higher than this range, right? I mean, how much of a difference in production is there really between Dak Prescott and Daniel Jones, who's going a little bit behind the 108, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you look at guys like DJ Moore, who are going in this range, and you can get probably similar production, I think, from Jacoby Myers, guys like that for, mid-seconds who are going way later. So again, this entire range, I would continually look to trade back from, because I think the hype or the name value on some of these players far exceeds the gap in value to the next tier or even two tiers down at some of these positions.
Especially at the running back position, because you can move back to rounds 9 and get guys like, Derrick Henry's going in the 8th, Aaron Jones is going in the 9th, and use those more of a rental and move up for those guys that, like a Drake London, like a Chris Olave, are going to have a much longer career. Mike, the biggest thing that I'm doing, and when I'm doing my startups, like I'm literally looking at my rankings and I'm like, wait a second, I have DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris all over Ramondre Stevenson, and then I go to draft and I'm like, I want Stevenson. Like I felt the most comfortable about his situation with the new offensive coordinator, him getting 60 plus receptions last year. I ended up drafting him and then flipping him for a second round pick plus a couple picks later. And I'm really questioning myself after we get past ETN, and I think Gibbs is going to be in that area, Eckler and Jacobs, and then it's Javonte, Swift, and Najee and Ramondre, and I'm having a hard time not moving Ramondre above them. And call me crazy.
No, I can't call you crazy for that. I mean, I definitely wouldn't put Rom over Najee right now, but I could probably put him over Swift pretty easily, given the fact that Swift has no trust in that offense, and he's been injured quite a bit. We don't know what a full season of Swift really looks like. So I think,
and maybe we never will. That's the crazy thing is you look at the way he played last year. He had 4 games that were top 5 running backs, and then he had 5 games that were absolute busts where you couldn't trust him at all. So it's like we see those flashes of him where Ramondre Stevenson was a rock solid RB1 to high end RB2 every week. Javonte's got that injury history, which we're hoping there, and I think Najee really finished the season well. So if you have guys in the same tier, and you and I talk about it all the time, let's move back to the back of that tier and add a little bit of value. And even if it's just a 24-2-3 swap to move back 8 picks and try to get into that area and start to play with those tiers, there's so much strategy goes in there. And I think, even Mung said in that 108 area, you got Daniel Jones who could go there. There's so many different avenues we could go. Let's talk about the 109, because this is where we start to get guys like, Kittle and Goddard go, and Chubb goes. Jerry Jeudy really keeps moving up there. Chris Godwin. 109 was taken after all of those. So Jeudy, Godwin, Chubb, Goddard, Kittle. We'll start with you, Mike. Who are you taking in that area? Because I think we're trying to put names in there. The 109 at this point, we're probably looking at one of the running backs, in that area. Who are you taking here?
So it's Jeudy, Godwin,
Chubb, Goddard, and Kittle.
Yeah, I would take Jeudy actually. It's coin flip between Jeudy and the 109, but I'm always going to take the running back over the. I'm always going to take the wide receiver over the running backs when it's that close as far as value. Like I said before, I would take Jeudy, not comfortably though. It's
I know, right?
It's close.
The tricky part is, so we get into this area, and I mean, we both love Jeudy, and we're working our way up. Watson, Debo, Michael Pittman and Jameson Williams all go above him. I could argue with some of those. I mean, I think I could move Jeudy into that area, but you don't have to. Like, he hasn't not outside the Smash Accept community, like the Jerry Jeudy hype hasn't hit yet. And I think he goes earlier in some of our drafts. Like, right now he's going in that same area as Godwin, but I would no problem taking a round earlier with Jameson Williams and Michael Pittman. In my estimation, and I don't know where you're at with that, but like I'm starting to move him up. Like today I challenged myself. I was on the clock to pick between Debo and Jeudy or Christian Watson and Jeudy. I'm taking Jeudy just for the age and the upside in that area.
I would agree with that with Jeudy, and then it's also a testament to how deep this rookie draft is, where the 109 and the 202 have a giant difference as far as value goes. There's a teardrop after. Yeah.
Someone yelled at me today for that. I said, hey, dude, we talk about the Smash Zone in here all the time. It's 110 to 204. I had the 202, and I tried to move up to 109. The guy goes, bro, you talk about it too much. Like, that's where you want to be. That's that spot. And this draft has been so much fun because they're doing that all the time. They're, like, giving me dad quotes and about insulated trades and about where to move and trying to take all my guys. And I'm like, all right, it means we've been doing the right thing on Smash or Pass and Smash Accept, so I love that. Mung, we get into that 110 area. You spoke about, DJ Moore as well, but I feel like, again, the 110 area is DJ Moore, Jared Goff, Pat Freiermuth, George Pickens, Kenny Pickett, in that area. I'm still smashing the 110. Like, I keep going through here, and it feels like the 110 is that area for me here.
Yeah, and this is why I was saying I want to either trade up into the top few rounds for quarterback or just hold off, right?
Yeah.
Because I just don't see any of the guys going in this range. A Goff, Pickett, Jones, maybe
Wilson.
Geno and Carr move up a little
Yep,
bit.
they did.
But, I mean, these guys aren't true difference makers in fantasy, I don't think. Maybe Russell Wilson if he regains form, but there's also a lot of risk associated there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just where I don't know that there's going to be a huge difference between a Derek Carr or a Mac Jones or, Kyle Trask, who's going way later, who the Bucs seem to be set on as their starter heading into next season. Not a whole lot of rushing upside from these guys. So again, I think I just keep trading down in this range. Mm-hmm. And for me, that means the asset that is most likely to gain value, barring some crazy move in free agency, is still, the 1.9, 1.10 in this range.
And this is my second startup this offseason, and that's what I find is after 109, I feel like I'm picking up 110 to 202 at a discount. In Smash 8, I have all of them. That's where I'm moving into that area, and I have no problem because when you talk to me in the offseason, I mean, like, do I want Jared Goff for the 110? I mean, Jared Goff isn't worth that area to me in this particular draft. If you were talking about it last year, he wasn't, and now we're kind of stretching it. Nerd Boy, when we're drafting, like, I am trying hard to move into those top 2 rounds for these quarterbacks because after you get past Tua, Trey Lance, there's not a quarterback goes for like 4 rounds until you get into that Cousins, Daniel Jones, who I think are slightly above. And then, like we said, Mung's giant area of your Kenny Pickett's, Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Mac Jones, Geno, Carr. They're all just like lumped in there. If you can get 2 of these quarterbacks, even if your second quarterback is Tua or Lance, I feel like it's the way to go, even if you got to move up. And in Smash 8, I ended up getting, I used my 24 first and the 212 to move up to 108 in the idea of that I was going to get 2 quarterbacks. And then Jamar Chase fell, and I was like, I fell into the trap. Like, I got to have Jamar Chase and got Chase and Fields. But I think my build might feel a little bit sexier if it was maybe Fields and, Kyler Murray or Fields and Deshaun Watson, And I think if you can get 2 stud quarterbacks in your startups, they're never going to be cheaper.
Yeah, I'm always preaching about the price of quarterbacks in startups where, you can get them at half the price of what they're going to cost. So I agree with what Mung said, where I might wait, where there's a Daniel Jones in the 6th, 7th round. I don't think he's going to stay there that much longer, given that contract that he just got. But he is a great target. I don't see a giant gap between him or, like he said, Dak or Tua, for that matter. I don't know. Tua is kind of a wide range of ADP where he's going right now. But I agree. You could definitely trade up, but I wouldn't break the bank to do that, where,
Yeah.
I can build up my wide receivers in those rounds and then wait until the 6th or 7th and then grab a Kirk or Daniel Jones and feel pretty decent about that I'm going to get production elsewhere to match up and make up for that loss of 2 elite quarterbacks.
And I'm on board with both of you. I think if we're not getting those 2 elite quarterbacks, that's why it's so important to draft your rookie picks instead of reaching on a guy, because when we get to that area, who knows who falls, and they're fluid areas that everybody wants, right? Like, not everybody wants Jared Goff on their team. Everybody wants that 110 when you get to that area in your rookie draft, and you can play around with it. And I know so many people, they're like, yo, Dad, I don't know where to go. I have like 6 rookie picks and my roster isn't full. It's March, man. Like, you don't need to have a roster in March. You just need to have value and assets. And I think people look at that when they're talking about their draft picks. They're like, oh, look at your team. It's trash. Dude, it's March. Like, we are going to add value by moving around in the draft. Someone's going to get excited and pay, Chris Godwin for the 202 because they get rookie hype and fall in love with someone. They're going to overpay and they're going to be able to move into those areas. So you can buy your quarterback in this after the startup. Just don't reach on a guy just because those rookie picks are there. And I think so many people just say that. They're like, oh, man, you know what? I know what Chris Godwin can do. I'm going to take Chris Godwin over the 109. Or I saw a little bit of George Pickens. I'm going to take him over the 110 or 110, not the 110. But we're looking at that, and it's like those picks, if you're close, this time of year, it's always the picks. And the next set falls a little bit. So the 111, 112 go in that late 7th round. And the 7th round, you're looking at Brandon Ayuk, Derrick Henry, Mac Jones, Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, Terry McLaurin, Hollywood Brown, then the 111 and 112. Is there a single guy that I just mentioned, Mung? And I know like I said, Hollywood Brown, and both you guys, your eyes lit up a little bit. But the 111 and 112, is there a single guy out of that group that you would take over these picks?
Yeah, I mean, I won't get too sidetracked because I've talked about my feelings about Marquise Brown on past shows, but I think he belongs in that Deebo Samuel range, much, much higher, multiple rounds higher in startups. So I think he's clearly, way above the 111, 112. Other than that, again, like the Mac Jones of the world, right? I think he's better than what we saw of him with Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator. I actually think Mac Jones will bounce back a little bit with Bill O'Brien. Mm-hmm. But again, in fantasy, I just don't know that any of these quarterbacks in this range are going to be particularly, distinguishing themselves from the next tier. And again, you have a lot of running backs who just are kind of there, right? People see it, and running back is always an issue, especially in redraft, but even in dynasty mindsets, people are like, well, who's my RB2? Mm-hmm. Right. And I think none of these guys really have secure jobs or are going to be those true difference makers. Right. We'll see about Derrick Henry. I've been wrong on him before. He's proved me wrong multiple years.
It's got to be wrong. He's got to prove you wrong right at one point. You know what I mean? Like we keep saying this every time this year, and he's the guy that like if he hits this year, yeah, you get a great 29-year-old running back who's the top 5 to 10 RB for sure. And I think the one that really sticks out to me here, Mung, is given the situation, everything that's been going on with Joe Mixon, he's moved back up that board. And J.K. Dobbins, there's a lot of hype there. I mean, this is where you either move back, but I mean, if you look at the rookie picks, the 111, 112, same question with you, Nerd Boy. Is there anybody there that you're like, dude, I'm pounding the table, I want this guy over these players? Because 111, 112 is where you're going to start to see if Zach Evans or Charbonnet or one of these other running backs move into a situation. And I'm avoiding the running back position as much as I can outside of maybe 6 to 7 guys. I'm moving back because there's going to be competition coming.
I think I would maybe entertain one of those quarterbacks at that spot, as far as Mac Jones goes, or, depending on what my roster looks like. And, there's a huge drop off after Mac Jones and Goff. You're looking at Jimmy G and those guys that don't really necessarily have a sure job. I'm sure he will land somewhere, but at this moment, at least Mac has that security where he's going to actually start day one.
And that's that position where you're like, I feel like most people when they finish their startups if they don't have that QB2 or QB3. I feel like that's the position that they panic the most.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to start reaching for guys that maybe are going a little earlier than they should. Like the Genos and the Cars, and there's not a high ceiling there. Geno actually might have the highest ceiling of those guys, but they're going to pass up on the 109, 110, which what you said was, it could be Charbonnet, it could be Evans. There's a chain there as well. There's just so many great running backs that could land in smash spots that I would have a hard time just passing up on.
There's going to be 7 of them out there that throw off the landscape. There's going to be 7 guys with wherever they get drafted, no matter what area they go to, they're going to affect who you draft as a running back, and I think that's the only part that's a hang up for me in that area. Now's when we get tricky, right? Because I feel like there's a mental perception among where, like, okay, we just drafted the 112, and in most drafts, the 201 is spaced out for a while, and then we're like, oh, well, this is a second round pick. And in this year at the 201, you're getting a guy who's equivalent to maybe 107, 108 last year. You're looking at Calvin Ridley, Rashad Bateman, Deontay Johnson, Rachaad White in the 201.
Yeah, and I think, one outlier here for me is Calvin Ridley. I think that's way too early for him. I understand that it wasn't like a major injury for missing time, but at the same time, a year off from football, more than that, is still worrisome. We saw with Deshaun Watson, there's definitely rust to be shaken off. And, with wide receivers, they play a much more explosive position where they have to make those cuts, and where any sort of, non conditioning, if they're not fully ready, that can lead to injuries or just not being as productive as they previously were. I believe he's like 28 or 29 too. He's a little older than I
know. The hype is
the last time I looked.
The time to buy Calvin Ridley was 6 months ago. Now he's valued almost a round higher than Christian Kirk, who just balled out. And it's like, we don't know the situation that we're assuming that Calvin Ridley's going to come in and become the wide receiver 1 after a full year off, and Christian Kirk had a full year with Trey Lance as like the apple of his eye. Like, I don't see it being that drastic to put him into that area. And who would you're leaning 201 there for sure, correct?
No. So a couple wide receivers that I'm looking at in this range, Rashad Bateman, Jahan Dotson. I think those guys belong in first round valuations, or at least, above the 201, above any of the wide receivers, not named Smith-Njigba in this class. For me, I think I like them quite a bit more. So I think those guys I would take over the 201, definitely the 201 though, over guys like, looking at Rachaad White and Alvin Kamara in that range. I think those guys should be way further down the list than the early second. Again, I think that's where some dynasty GMs are reaching to start filling those roster spots rather than just drafting for value.
Yeah, and Mike, I messaged you right before I was at the 202, which, almost goes a full round later, but those guys were falling there. I had the choice between Rachaad White, Rashad Bateman, and the 201, and I really want to buy into Rachaad White, right? He's gone from 214 to 220. He's saying all the right things. He wants to be the feature back. Dude can catch. If they don't bring in someone elite, like if they bring in Tank Bigsby to kind of do some of that goal line work, and we have a guy that can catch 60, 70 balls, I think he does well here. But like, there is rumor that it's, Bijan Robinson to the Bucks. I've heard a little bit of rumors. So, there is that opportunity where he's going to get Michael Cartered, if you will, where we're like, hey, I like Michael Carter. I love this situation. And then boom, Breece Hall comes in and Michael Carter goes from fringe. He was a fringe first round pick in that offseason last year. Now, all of a sudden, now you can get him for a third.
I like Rashad to a degree, but he was very inefficient last year. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that I would take him over any of these rookie running backs that are going to fall in the early second, or like I said, the 101 to the 202 is pretty much the same pick to me. All these guys are in the same tier, so that I can't even put Bateman over the 202 at this point in time. I think we were texting earlier today about that.
I had him at 203, and that's where I felt like if I have it where I'm debating, and I know, Mung, you're a little bit higher, I had Dotson equivalent to the 201. I had Bateman equivalent to the 203 to 205 range. And I'm like, if I can get the pick, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more advantageous because who knows what goes on there. For time's sake now, we're just going to go a little bit more rapid fire of this player or this pick. So, I mean, we're looking at draft picks right now. Let's go to the 203, Amari Cooper or Aaron Jones. Mung.
I would rank them Amari Cooper, then 203, then Aaron Jones.
And Aaron Jones feels like a pretty good value if you've passed up on the running back position. I mean, you're telling me Aaron Jones goes 3 rounds later than Joe Mixon? I'm on board for that. You know, like that seems like he was not. Joe Mixon was inefficient where Aaron Jones was efficient last year. So I know it's a little bit more of a timeshare. Nerd Boy, Hopkins 204 or Miles Sanders?
I would probably take Hopkins over the 204, and then I would take the 204 over Miles Sanders. So, right in the middle there.
And if we're at this point and you have to understand your direction, and I see so many guys draft and they have no direction. It's like, well, that guy's worth more than this guy. I mean, if you're trying to build to win, 100% Hopkins. If you're trying to build to move back, yes, it's the 204. So at this point, we're just kind of giving you snapshots, but it does change. This is an interesting one here, Mung. 205, Stafford or Khalil Herbert?
Yeah, I would go with Khalil Herbert. I don't know if all of you checked out Matthew Berry's latest article on the combine rumors he heard when he was in Indy, but it sounds like the Bears are going to let Montgomery walk. So potentially the number 1 running back there. And also still some concerns about Stafford's neck and health, it sounds like. So I've moved him way down in my dynasty ranking. So I would go Herbert, then the 205, then Stafford.
And I mean, I was loving Herbert last year. If they draft somebody, dude, Khalil Herbert's kind of like Rachaad White, right? Like we're in this area. If they don't take someone, boom, you just won. If they do take someone, it's like an instant loss. And I think he's in that same area. 206, Keenan Allen or Greg Dulcich? And we're with you, Nerd Boy.
Yeah, I would take the 206 over both of them. We're looking at a pretty deep tight end class, where Kincaid.
Oh, you're getting Kincaid for sure there, or Meyer.
Yeah, I mean Kincaid. I love Kincaid. So I mean, if I can get Kincaid over Dolch, I'd do that all day. I think he's going to have some good DC. That's great value at the mid second right there for me.
Love it. And if you guys are doing this, just make sure we're looking at it back and forth. I mean, is Kincaid, has he moved up to your tight end 1 the way Mayer showed up at the combine?
Yeah, he was already getting pretty close. I had them as 1A, 1B, and I think I have to move Kincaid up there. I want to see his pro day. I want to see him, fully healthy, but he is a freak, and he's got the athletic ability to be a day one starter and producer in fantasy for sure.
Absolutely. I'm going to take the 207 because it's Brian Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Elijah Moore. And I'm like, take the 207. I've been literally trying to say, get a second-round pick for Pacheco, for Brian Robinson. I feel like, again, similar situation as Herbert. You're safer with that mid-area. Mung, 208, Cortland Sutton or Tyler Lockett? And I feel like if we're trading, I don't think you can get the 208 for either at this point. But if you're on the clock, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I still would take Sutton here, whether he's in Denver or elsewhere. I do think he's a big play machine. He can get those touchdowns. He has the big body for that. So I still like him quite a bit more than the 208. Lockett is interesting because, again, it depends on what Seattle does at quarterback and wide receiver in the draft. But I think that's about right for Lockett. If you are contending, I do think he's sneaky value in terms of a steady producer, who is much older and not valued that highly.
The next one, I mean, Jacoby Meyer in 209. I think we've all kind of been on that Jacoby Meyer, bandwagon where that's going to be a good value. The next one's kind of interesting. So we get 210, Purdy or Donovan Peoples-Jones. We'll go with you on that one.
That's about where I have. That's about where I have Purdy. I think I would probably roll the dice on Purdy. Just in case, he's he showed what he can do. He showed his ability, and then, he's at worst, a backup quarterback that could probably, hit you with some spot starts if need be.
We got Tannehill, 211, or Sky Moore for you, Mung.
Yeah, I'll go with Tannehill here.
I agree.
It sounds
That's nice
like
value.
he's still the starter in Tennessee heading into 2023 for right now. Malik Willis certainly didn't show a whole lot as a passer, so I do think Tannehill is a sneaky value here.
So I want to talk about round 14 down. So rounds 14 through maybe 19, you're looking at these guys in looking at rookie picks, in looking at value, they are worth a third round pick. And what I keep seeing in startups is people be like, I'm going to give you the 13th and an 8th to move you up to the 6th. Guys, don't fall for that. That is a third round rookie pick value. You know, like, yes, we want to build depth. We want to build out there. But I mean, if I'm giving you a third round pick to move from, let's say, you know, in this particular situation, to move from David Njoku to Pat Freiermuth, you lost hard. Like you ended up losing out, you know, if you move those areas. And I see it all the time where like, we got to start looking at rounds 6 or rounds right now. We're looking at rounds 8 through 12. Those guys are worth roughly second round picks from 201 to 212. Then you start looking at that rounds, 14 down. Those are third round picks, guys. These are, I like to take the players in these areas. But Mike, talk to me a little about, you've been doing a lot of drafts. A lot of people have different philosophies when it comes to these rounds 14 through 18.
Yeah, I am looking at, value that's going to increase in time, or I'm just trying to, value as far as where these picks are to the player. It's kind of depends on what's going on in the draft. I do try to move my later picks as kind of bait to get into the earlier rounds, where I'm doing similar things where I'm moving back and forward with those picks. I try to have all of my picks in the earlier rounds as far as, my big players and everything like that. So if I can use the later rounds as far as, additions to trades but there is some good value, and it's more about what I said before. You have to block and you have to look at certain startups to really see where that value is. It's hard to jump into a random startup and just, know who's going to be in the 14th, the 15th, the 16th round.
Right.
That comes with some practice, and
absolutely,
you got to do some research before you do that.
And you guys have posted that in the Discord. That's another, little shout out to you guys. Can join in on the Patreon, hit up on the Discord, get access to us. Mung, the last thing I want to end with is the difference in moving up early versus moving up back late. A lot of times people are like, well, I'm going to move you up from the 8th to the 7th, but I'm going to move you back from the 13th to the 14th. Talk to me about the discrepancy of how much it costs, because I'm looking at this board and I'm like, dude, if I have to move, like, I would love to just move from 14 to 18, give somebody the idea that they're getting a crazy value. But when you look at rookie picks, that's no different from 301 to 305.
Yeah, and the best advice that I can give there is look at ADP, right? Find a trustworthy source of startup ADP and basically just throw in player names or pick values instead of looking at it in terms of the startup pick, right? Mm-hmm. Would you trade the 201 plus Tua to get Dak Prescott, right? If you're looking at moving up a few spots early on and they want your, 10th round rookie pick or startup pick or whatever it is they're asking for, right? Try and put those player names in there with a sense of who you can get at that startup pick to make it, to really look at whether or not it's worth it to you to potentially lose that player in that place of the startup draft later on to move up a few spots or move down to spots, right? Is picking up a guy like Brandon Cooks or Tyler Lockett, worth losing out on an early round, Kenneth Walker, moving back down all the way to, like a Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, an older running back, right? So ask yourselves those kind of questions by placing player names into those, evaluations.
I love it. And Nerd Boy, give us one more nugget here about drafts, and what you've been seeing, something that you think is going to help out. And guys, I mean, this has been a fun one, like always talking startups and talking strategy and looking at players versus picks. I think it is a great exercise this time of year.
Yeah, I think, startup, you probably should just get in there and start sending, base trades to everyone in your startup. Try to figure out who's active, who's not active, and try to gain, that knowledge of, who likes to move around early on in that startup so that you can, pretty much get their value right away. And you figure out by their counters and the way that they're talking to you, and you can find out that you have a trade partner early on, and then kind of make a lot of moves later if you are trying to move around the board a little bit. I love to do that where I'm, introducing myself to everyone in the group, and then I'm just talking trades with them, and I figure out where they like to be in the board, and it's a pretty easy way to gain good value as you go.
And we're definitely going to do a trade etiquette pod, but I mean, it's a matter of like, I do the same thing. We've made 45 trades in Smash 8 already through rounds. We're in round 9. I've made 15, but it's a matter of, hey, what do you need here? Let's talk about this. It's not, and nothing can kill a trade more than ripping the guy for sending you an offer you don't like. Just start talking it through and just be like, hey, this doesn't quite work. But guys, thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the process.